Welcome back to the Lap by Lap podcast. I'm your host, Ethyn White, research and sustainability engineer for Ecolyte. So we're continuing on our constructors review. This will be our last episode of just reviewing them, and then we'll be moving on to the races. Just reviewing and pre and post race review. So first up we have is this Visa Cash App Racing Bulls. It's a bit of a mouthful. This team was rebranded from AlphaTauri, Red Bull's clothing brand, to now this. So it's been said that this team's going to be working more closely with the dominant Red Bull team. If people didn't know, AlphaTauri was the sister team of Red Bull. It was more or less a place where they could put their junior drivers in, and it was like a huge change last year where they were I think it was Helmut Marko, the actual leader of Red Bull. He was saying that he doesn't find AlphaTauri profitable anymore. So there was the decision that Alpha or Visa Cash App Red Bull or Racing Bull, sorry, a bit of a mouthful, was going to start working more closely with Red Bull, which I guess makes a lot of. Some teams would call it cheating because they technically get more wind tunnel time. If anyone doesn't know what the wind tunnel time is, FIA, depending on where you finish in the constructors championship, you get a certain amount of time in the wind tunnels. The wind tunnels show you the airflow over the car. So instead of taking out on track, you can get a visual airflow. So designers can actually see, okay, the airflow is flowing over the wing like this, and they need to do X, Y, and Z. So if they need to make it more aggressive, less aggressive, more downforce, less downforce. So some teams might disagree with this, saying that they get even more. Red Bull obviously winning the constructors, and then AlphaTauri last year coming quite low in the championship. So just benefiting both sides quite a bit. My opinion, you have teams like Ferrari and Mercedes who could probably afford a sister team. So I don't know why they're complaining. Definitely Ferrari. Ferrari could 100%. You probably could sign up a Prema if they don't know. If anyone doesn't know, that is like a Formula 2 Italian racing team. So they could probably bring them up to F1, and they could have a bit of a collaboration there, and then they wouldn't have to complain about it. So it's fair game in my opinion. Though I do think there should be maybe a bit of a even though I do think that it should be relevant to each team, like Red Bull shouldn't be able to test their parts in the Visa Cash App, which I don't know how it specifically works other than they get the rankings, but it's definitely something that FIA maybe need to look into. We then look over to the driver lineup. We have Daniel Ricciardo, the Honey Badger, which I was quite happy to see back on the grid. He was definitely a fan favorite. You see just his smile everywhere in the grid. Overall, just a really amazing character, very funny. He replaced Nick de Vries midway through last season, and due to poor performance, I hope, and I genuinely mean this. I hope Daniel has a really good season. The poor he hasn't had the best career. Oh, he's had a good career, but it's definitely gone a bit downhill. Going to Red Bull, joining AlphaTauri originally, then going to Red Bull, getting beat by Max, and he definitely didn't want to be number two driver, which then led him to leaving to Reynolds. Reynolds was somewhat successful. He got Reynolds' first podium in a very long time. Going then to McLaren, which I think he got completely wiped the floor with Lando, and then obviously returning back to AlphaTauri after taking half a season break. So I hope he has a good season this year. He's definitely a fan favorite, as I've said before. We next move on to Yuki Tsunoda. Yuki's been with the team for quite a bit now. He's been since 2021, obviously replacing the driver of Daniel Kvyat. Kvyat's now converted to endurance racing like Le Mans, if anyone was interested. Yuki, he's definitely a young talent. In my opinion, I don't think he will be like a world champion. I think he'll be lucky to get a couple of race wins. I think I see him only being like an AlphaTauri driver. I don't think there's been a demand in either the other team, like let's say Haas asking for Yuki or Aston Martin. So we then move over to the team principal, who is his first year in the lead, is Lauren Mekies. He took over from Jean Todt. So there's definitely a huge change. Before I think he was a race engineer and obviously being promoted after Jean Todt retired, or having quite a long career in Formula One, obviously just managing Toro Rosso AlphaTauri. So he definitely has like a lot to prove this season. Obviously replacing Jean Todt, and I mean having this new sponsorship with Visa Cash App. I mean, I don't think I've mentioned this, but I'm just gonna just throw this out here. I think the livery looks very nice. Definitely, I think it gives me very much vibes of Toro Rosso 2019. So I quite like that as well. It's very sleek. I mean, and then the new sponsorship of Visa Cash App. I mean, it was rumored to be. I think it was meant to be Boss at one point. It was rumored, but obviously Visa now. Um, we then move on to Sauber. So Sauber, other people might have known it as Alfa Romeo. Alfa has ended their like partnership with Sauber, and now it's Sauber's previous title sponsor, Kick or Stake, has now become the new title sponsor. So I think the whole name of the team is Stake F1 Team Kick Sauber, which is quite a mouthful. We will just be referring to it as Kick just due to the streaming service. Obviously, the livery looks very nice, a nice neon green, but also quite a bit of carbon, but not too much carbon. I think they strike to like a nice balance. It's a very unique one with like a nice highlighter green. We then move on to the driver pairing. We have Valtteri Bottas, Mercedes extra second driver, Lewis Hamilton's old teammate. Bottas hasn't really, I mean, he hasn't had like very impressive results at Sauber. I mean, this team's also a bit of a midfield team, midfield back market team. So I mean, it's definitely not a car that definitely is fighting in the front or high midfield. So I really Bottas has obviously been a fan favorite because he has the mullet, so converting into an Aussie, some might say, with the mustache as well. We then move on to Guan Yu Zhou. I think this is Guan Yu Zhou's second season in F1. Oh, no, third. This is becoming his third season in F1. He definitely brings a lot of benefits to Alfa Romeo. Obviously, having a lot of Chinese sponsorships. I think when he first joined the grid, I think it was rumored that the Chinese sponsors would be willing to pay like $30 million or yeah, $30 million to any F1 team to take him. So that definitely was a large signing factor. So some may consider him a paid driver. He definitely he has like had some good results. But he also had that big crash in 2022 at UK where he flipped on top and the car did a full it was on the car was upside down basically, and that was definitely a scary thing. We then move over to Alfa Romeo, oh sorry, Sauber's team principal. So the team principal is Andre Seald. If you don't know, he was quite a high up in McLaren, and then he went over to Sauber. I mean, he's going to be there until Audi joins the grid. So obviously, there's like Audi's going to be taking over Sauber, or they'll have like a sponsorship like Alfa Romeo had. Obviously, I think it's very exciting, definitely to have Audi in the 2024 grid. I mean, with Andreas, I think it is. Sorry for the mispronunciation. I mean, definitely can help give the foundations for Audi to succeed in Formula One. We then move on to McLaren. McLaren being a very old team in the sport. People don't know. I think it's the third oldest. You have Ferrari, Williams, and then you have McLaren. The livery definitely has changed up quite a bit. Obviously, following the pattern with the 2024 grid, it's definitely got into a more carbon. Where last year I really liked I think it's like a baby blue. It's a very light blue that they had on the car in 2023 in the orange. But this year, like very no blue. Now they're just sticking with the papaya orange and their exposed carbon now, which I mean, it looks aggressive. Let's put it that way. I mean, it looks and it definitely looks nice. However, I do prefer the bit of blue. You have the driver lineup of Lando Norris. The person Lando's been with the team since 2019, so he's definitely proven to the team, and I think he wants to win the championship, much like Michael did with Ferrari, but Lando wants to do it with McLaren. Yeah, he has had a few occasions where he could have got a win. One instance I can think about is Russia 2021. However, he didn't box for slicks while it was raining, so he did fail to win the race there. He's definitely approaching Nico Hulkenberg's record of longest career without without a win. If we stop looking at the negatives, we look at the positives of Lando. Lando's definitely had quite a bit of good results in his career. I mean, obviously with his first podium in 2020 in Austria after quarantine. I mean, that was probably maybe quite a highlight for me because I remember watching that. You have other races like 2023 where he got a surprise podium in Monza. Uh, yeah, and then that's like some of the highlights I can think from the top of my head. We then move over to his teammate Oscar Piastri. I mean, Oscar Piastri had a very good season last year. He got like the sprint win in Qatar, which was some would say is like very impressive. I mean, obviously it's a sprint; it doesn't count as like a full race win since it's a shorter duration of a race. But still, nevertheless, he had to beat Max Verstappen, which is no achievement. Oscar definitely was able to push the car to its limits. He I think yeah, he even led in Belgium Sprint GP, I think it was as well. So definitely showing that he has the pace. Obviously trying to compete with Lando Norris, more experienced teammates. But I definitely don't think that has stopped him from trying to beat him over and over again. I mean, if you didn't know about Oscar, Oscar had a bit of controversy with Alpine because Alpine had lost Fernando Alonso and then they promoted him from reserve to main driver. However, Oscar disagreed with this and said like it was against his choice or without his acknowledgement, which led to Oscar then signing to McLaren, and then Alpine had a bit of a lawsuit with him where he said, where they said we've basically paid for, we helped you through the lower levels of racing, such as Formula Three, Formula Two, go karting, and they were saying that they want to check in their investment basically with Oscar. However, he didn't end up going to them. So definitely a loss in my opinion for them. It's a bit of a shame, but nevertheless, Oscar's been flourishing in McLaren, and I definitely think he's done a good job. Then we have Zach Brown. I mean, Zach Brown been with the team for quite a bit, hiring some good drivers like Daniel Ricciardo, Lando Norris. Been with the team for quite a while now. He worked with he worked when Fernando was in the team. So he's definitely been with the team through the highs and the lows. I mean, one thing I do definitely think he's improved is he's upgraded the facilities of McLaren. So one issue that they definitely had at McLaren is that they didn't really have a good or up-to-date wind tunnel. So how they got their wind tunnel testing is they would have to send it to Toyota. So obviously transporting all the parts to Toyota's facilities took a bit of long time. This mainly caused like a bit of a fault in I think it was 2022, the start of 2022 and start of 2023, where they were seen to both have like a bit of a slow start to the season with the drivers. I mean, well, obviously this year, hopefully, they just get in there and just start cracking. I mean, we then move on to Aston Martin. I mean, Aston Martin's livery hasn't changed much from last year. I think it's a different shade of green, if I'm not mistaken. Don't quote me on that. I'm not an art student. But it's sticking with the British racing green or like that vibe. I personally do not like the new shade of green. However, the livery hasn't changed much other than the shade of green. We look to their driver lineup with Fernando Alonso. Fernando obviously having a really good season last year. I mean, until it got to mid-season where they kind of just started to like go down in performance. This could just be due to the other teams catching up, and there was also I remember reading an article where it said that they changed something about the tires where I don't know if they made it like thicker or wider, but basically this definitely hindered Aston Martin's performance. So obviously Fernando being one of the oldest drivers on the grid right now, I think he's been racing longer than some of the drivers have. Some of the Formula Two drivers have been alive. Like just for example, Ollie Borman, the Prema driver, when Fernando Alonso won the Spanish or came second place in the Spanish Grand Prix early 2000s. Ollie Borman was born like so 2005 to be specific, but so that definitely just shows how experienced Fernando is. Fernando's a two-time world champion, been against some of the greats such as Lewis Hamilton, Michael Schumacher, Felipe Massa, Sebastian Vettel as well. So he's definitely had his fair share of battles. Been around the grid a bit. he was with Honda, I think it was, in his first race. Then he was at he then went to Ferrari. He's then been to Ferrari. He's been at McLaren. He's been at Renault. So he's definitely been all over. Or he's definitely had quite a wide variety of teams. Obviously, he won his two championships with Renault. He had Crashgate, which I'll get into a little bit, I guess. Crashgate, if you don't know, was in the 2007 championship where Fernando Alonso was in Renault, and I don't know if it's not stated whose choice. It was probably team principal's choice, where they made Fernando Alonso's teammate crash out after he had pitted. So after Fernando had pitted, so there would be a safety car, and Fernando would be able to take advantage of this, which led to him winning the race. Obviously, this was like a huge scandal, and I mean, yeah. We then move over to Lance Stroll. Lance Stroll's obviously the son of the team owner, Lawrence Stroll. So some do definitely do believe he's a pay driver. But I think Stroll has these moments. I mean, he has these moments of greatness and he has these moments of downfall. Obviously, last year he was beaten by Fernando quite bad. I wouldn't say badly, but it was definitely wasn't a very close fight between the two. Um, yeah, I mean, he definitely has these moments at Racing Point when they got his first pole in Turkey. I think this was 2020. Ultimately, he wasn't able to convert that into a window. We then look at over to the team principal, Mike Crack. Definitely a very unique name, to say the least. I don't really know much about Mike other than he was promoted. He took over Otmar Safner after they just didn't think he was performing well. And yeah, I mean, so far the team's been doing quite well under supervision. I mean, they've built a new factory and facilities for the team, so it's definitely showing that the team is growing. Thank you guys for listening. That's my side. That's my side from the 2024 constructors review. Let me know if there's anything else you want to hear or learn about. And thank you for listening, and hope you have a great day.